Create games at your table. This is Jonathan Albin and Game Master's Soapbox for NycosRPG. And today we have a really chock-full schedule of things that we want to talk about, or I want to talk about, but I'm going to be speaking of it in the we because I'm thinking that what I want to talk about is why we, perhaps I'm only speaking about Game Masters, but I believe it's true of everybody, why we like to tell stories, why we do tell stories. And when I go through this list, it's going to be kind of rapid fire. I'm going to go over the points as quickly as I can because I want to get on to the good stuff, which is conversations with you. This is twitch.tv, NycosRPG, and this is where we record, and we are here every night at 11 p.m., so even if you don't get a chance to see this other than on YouTube, know that every night at 11 p.m. Pacific time, I'm on the air ready to talk to you about role-play gaming. So let's get started, shall we? Alrighty, so when you are talking about a game master and a storyteller, a director, however you want to say it, there's 1,000 different words that could be used for it, but the idea of being the person who hosts the game, who presents the story or whatever, this is only a part of who humanity is. I mean, I like to think of it as being a majority, but I know that I'm actually a very small minority, as evidenced by my viewership. Come on, folks. You can tell your friends about me. It's okay. I'm not something to be ashamed of. Alrighty. So we tell stories for a myriad of reasons. We tell stories to educate. We tell stories to illuminate. We tell stories to commiserate. We tell stories to identify our perspective. But what I want to talk about today are really the motives. What are the things that drive storytellers? What it is that you can grab a hold of in your own life that will make your ability to tell stories improve. And so the first thing I'm going to talk about is the fact that we intend to share insights. Almost everybody who tells a story has a story to tell. I say that because there are a lot of people who will start a conversation and not know what to do with it because they have no place else to go in the conversation. They're not even sure where they are in the world as far as terms and of messages. And so the reality, though, is the majority of us have in our minds the desire to share our minds. We as individual human beings think differently, so differently from each other that in many cases it seems to be an impassable gap between ourselves and others. But the reality is that we want to share what we believe, what we hold true, what has been our experience. And this is in part for social reasons. We want to be a part of the whole and we want others to see how our brains work and the like. But we do this to share what our world has been. Now, that process does not always come easily, and sometimes it takes a really long time. I know that one of my biggest challenges is that I talk a lot before I get around to saying anything really useful. So I'm endeavoring each episode to do a better job of describing what it is I'm trying to say quicker. But the reality is that itself is a barrier to being able to share insights, because until I find a way to connect with you, my words are going to fall on deaf ears. I realize that. But the intention is there, that I want you to get me. I want you to understand what it is that I'm trying to say. We also tell stories because we seek acceptance of our perspective. Maybe we have a unique one. I've got in mind the stories of the fantastic people that have seen things that can't be comprehended, or they've experienced things that were spiritual. I know some of my oldest friends travel a lot to experience and see things that maybe nobody else has ever seen before, and that's exciting. But we want to have our perspective accepted. We want to be a part of other people's lives and know that what we have expressed is something that helps others. And so we seek this acceptance of our perspective more for the concepts of being understood or being even heard. The biggest challenge with communication is that it's a two-way process. And a show like this, where I'm pontificating and speaking out directly, sometimes is off-putting. Say, hey, Xanderfell, nice to have you back. It's either to theory craft or to screw with people. Oh, that screw with the people is part of it too. But for me, the specifics of telling a story is I want you to see what it is I'm trying to convey, what it is that I've got as far as the perspective, and I want to make sure that you can at least visualize it and communicate with it and accept it, so to speak. We also do it sometimes simply to inspire creativity. I know that there are people who would look at, say, for example, stories of religious leaders who tried to get people to consider things that they hadn't considered before. We want to inspire creativity. We want to have other people respond. I think your comment about to theory craft is a great example. The gee whiz or the what if. We do it because we're trying to get other people's inputs as well. Role playing is a great example. When you are telling a story or relating an experience, you want to hear the players' input and their understanding and comprehension of that as well, so that you and they will both have a creative communication, two-way connection. Yes, there we go. Psychological horror. That's a good one. We sometimes do this because we want to be belong to something bigger. I know that one of the biggest charges of running role play games is the more the merrier. In some fashions, it's kind of like the old performers on vaudeville and in variety TV shows that would spin the plates. They start the plate spinning on a stick, and they move around and hit all the different sticks spinning at the same time. That's kind of the way it is with the role-playing game for me. The more the merrier. If I can have 8 people engaged and interacting and communicating together on how they're going to handle a situation that I've created, I feel like I'm now part of something bigger. Adventure games are really good for this because adventure games will give you a framework where you are actually changing the world. You are making things happen and defining how the world is reacting, and therefore you are having agency and making a difference in the world. Furthermore, sometimes we hope to find meaning. I know that in my case, I've been game mastering for very close to 50 years. And in all of that time, what really matters is that my players have an opportunity to comprehend the big picture. The reason why I run long tail adventures, my campaigns are 7 years long, and they are nested and interconnected in ways so that the players can perhaps get a glimpse of the engine, the power that's driving the story. But I want to help. I want to find meaning in the world by knowing that I have a story to tell, and I have people that want to hear it. One of the worst things that can happen to a storyteller or a game master is the players say they're not coming anymore, or they're not going to show up. And so one of my biggest charges, of course, is running games for new players, because I'm always introducing them to the wider realm of playing role-playing games. And this gives them an opportunity to now be more connected to their communities. And for me, that's a meaning. I find meaning in the world by knowing that I am contributing to other people's happiness, other people's joy in the world, and the like. But we also do so because we expect to find others like ourselves. I know that there's an organization called SETI. You may have heard of it, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. The idea of finding others out there in the universe that at least can communicate with us, even if they're unlike us. The very fact that they can communicate would make them of our kind, so to speak. So the idea, therefore, is to, when I tell the story, the greatest charge I get is when players interact with the story, start to take meaning, start to build their own perspective, and then we have to work back and forth between what the story elements are that are static and those that are changeable, and how that interacts, because there are players that come in that feel that the universe absolutely has to be malleable and that their actions have to be the only ones that drive the world, without realizing that there is a pushback from the universe itself that has a seeming agenda. And so when we find other people that are of like mind, we really appreciate that. And so by being a storyteller, we're hoping that we can say something and relate something that the others can respond to and react to. Efficiently, also, we don't want that to be a one-way street. If I'm going to just tell a story and it's the same story every time, I would expect my players to fall asleep, be bored, or whatever, because there would not be any challenge. There wouldn't be any engagement. It would just simply be a linear description. And that's not what we do when we tell stories. We relate our experiences, we relate the situation, and then we expect a challenge to those assumptions. The players are going to dig. The others at the table are going to be choosing to adjust and modify the text in order to change the world, or at least make a mark on it. And I think that's really one of the keys. When we tell stories, we are offering others the ability to change the world, especially in a role-playing environment. If you are a presenter at a conference or whatever, and you're doing a single presentation speech, sometimes you don't remember that your audience is there for their own purposes, and the things they're looking for aren't necessarily the things that you came to bring them. And so you have to offer them the opportunity to make a modification or change the world through their interaction with your story. Because when we do all of these things, when we share our insights, we offer our perspective, we inspire creativity, we're giving them the tools for they themselves to now be the storytellers as well. Because when we do that, we are now both communicating, and the story isn't just a one-way street. Now, I want to thank you for letting me go through this, because the reality is that I hope to inspire in you the ability and the desire to tell stories. I'm going to be speaking with you here in a second, Xanderfell. I'm going to respond to your thing. But I did want to thank everybody that's watched this video. I know that I'm at a 15-minute mark, and I don't want to go much over that. This has been NycosRPG's Game Master Soapbox about telling stories. And so formally, the show is over. Thanks for being here today. If you like what you see, subscribe and follow. If you don't like what you see, thank you for the time that you spent with us, and I hope to see you again at another episode of NycosRPG's Game Master Soapbox.